Seattle is crazy. This is on full display early in the 5th episode of The Last of Us' 2nd season, when Dina and Ellie come across the Sarafite mural of the Prophet, urging people who see it to feel her love. This doesn't mean anything more to them than it does to us. This group is definitely culty, but why they devote their lives to the so far nameless prophet is anyone's guess. What's less mysterious is the pile of bullet-riddled bodies under the mural. Since the infected don't go around shooting people, there's no question that this is the work of the wolves. The painted response, "Feel this, bitch," underlines that this was intended to send a message. And that's not the last time we'll hear that particular expletive in this episode. Considering these groups have both been around for at least 11 years based on the Isaac flashback in the 4th episode, the blood between them is bad. While this scene makes the WLF look horrific, the way the hardcore scars rearrange the lights to add to the horror of what they did to the soldiers at the TV station gives you an idea of why this cycle keeps repeating. It doesn't make for a welcoming atmosphere. In fact, like this episode, it's a horror show. And from the outside looking in, it's hard to imagine why they wouldn't just turn around and go home. When they stumble onto this latest atrocity, Ellie starts to consider that they made a mistake. Not in the sense that going after an organized, militarized faction of cold-blooded killers was the issue, but how could she have been so dumb to get a pregnant Dina involved with this? Dina already made her feelings known about this when Ellie first brought it up at the end of the last episode. She wants to do it together. While the time they spent at the theater after that reminded us she's the more level-headed of the two and the better triangulator, her response when Ellie suggests she should go back again reveals that they both have a single-minded focus of exacting vengeance on Abby before they go back to Jackson. On their way to Seattle, Dina asked Ellie about the first person she killed. She skipped over Riley because that was too messed up and told her about killing the kid in Kansas City instead. She never asked Dina the same question. So she offers up her story here. When she was 8, she snuck out of the cabin she lived in with her mom and sister to play, and while she was gone, they were killed by a raider. She couldn't make it back in time to save them, but she was able to shoot and kill their murderer. It's an awful story, and the way she tells it adds to the despair, but she's not asking for Ellie's sympathy. She says that whatever Joel did to Abby and her crew, he didn't deserve to die like he did. She asks, what if she hadn't snuck out on the day her family died? What if their murderer made her watch as he did it? Would it matter if her family hurt his people first? For her, it wouldn't. If she hadn't killed him, she would have hunted him down forever. So she'll do whatever Ellie wants. After they share a girlfriend moment, she tells Ellie they can go back if she wants or they can keep going. There's no right answer, but if she dies, that's on her. And so the bottom line is that she understands why Ellie needs to do this and will respect her decision. This puts any thoughts of turning back to rest and gives us a better understanding of Dina's motivations. She doesn't mention it, but we know she was also close to Joel. So it was never something she was doing entirely for Ellie either way. When she brings up the idea of making her watch, it's a reminder that Nora was the one who held Ellie down at the lodge. Listening to the radio, they have a pretty good idea of how to get to where she is. This was helped by the fact that the wolves talk to each other like no one's listening. And Dina's running theory is that it's because the Seraphites are basically post-apocalyptic Amish people who don't use electronics. The planning takes some time. Dina is focused. Ellie wanders around and plays the first part of the song Future Days by Pearl Jam on a guitar in the theater, which gave the season 2 premiere its name, but the song didn't appear in that episode. Some morning after moments between the new couple are peppered in while she's working, and then Dina shows Ellie a blind spot she discovered in the wolves' patrols. If they both didn't recognize that it doesn't make sense that they leave this particular building alone, it would be absurd. It looks like an ideal trap situation when she sketches it out on paper. One large building they just avoid in the middle of their defenses has to be dangerous, and they know this. But they think a reckless plan is better than doing nothing. They plan to make it there after dark, past the dead scars on the way, and manage to make it past the spotlights to get inside what turns out to be an industrial site. One thing about walking into a war zone is that the two sides are pretty distracted with each other, so even though they had that encounter at the TV station, they haven't elevated themselves as a threat that needs to be taken care of yet. One place where that doesn't matter is in this building, which after a quiet lobby and an open door with nothing coming out of it to kill them provides a false sense of security, the horror show really begins. After they go far enough that they can't easily backtrack to leave the same way they came in, they found out that nothing rushing at them through the door wasn't because it was empty. It was because the infected here are all the stalker variety Ellie first encountered in the supermarket outside Jackson. They walked right into the nightmare scenario and would have died if Jesse didn't show up and start taking the stalkers out with his rifle. Once they escape by running into a park that the wolves won't enter, he explains that he left Jackson with Tommy the night after Ellie and Dina left. They had to sneak out too. It wasn't an official search and rescue. They just figured they would get killed on their own, so they came after them. Tommy and Jesse split up to cover more ground and are supposed to meet up in the morning. He says the plan is to leave the park, return to the theater, meet up with Tommy, and then go home. Ellie tries to object over the going home part, but before they can start arguing, they hear whistling like we heard from the Sarafite group back in episode 3. The WLF doesn't stay out of the park because of the infected. This is Scar territory. In the last episode, I thought it stood out that when Isaac told the Scar he was torturing that some of them knew the prophet was just a regular person, not a god, he immediately called them heretics. In the official podcast, the showrunner said this was evidence that there are two factions of the Seraphites. We heard the father in episode 3 tell his daughter that the prophet wasn't magic, and got the sense that they were a group of pacifists trying to flee the war. Unfortunately for our heroes, they ran into the other faction in this park, who appear to be the opposite of pacifists. They've captured a WLF soldier and have him strung up like the bodies they discovered in the TV station. He's still alive and begging for his life. He even offers to join their group and says he has information he can give them about Isaac. They don't seem remotely interested in not killing him, and there's a lot to take note of here. Dina's theory looks pretty good. They use torches rather than flashlights. They do appear to have an Amish thing going. The hanging/disemboweling is something they have down to a science. And not only is it a process, it appears to be a purification ritual. Free him so that he will know her love. After he does the deed, the main Scar says, and now he's free. The Jackson gang watches all of this in horror, and before they can slip away, they are spotted, and Dina gets shot in the leg with an arrow. Jesse picks her up so that they can get her back to the theater, and Ellie makes a distraction to buy them some time and keep the Scars busy. As they give chase, you notice that their warriors are both men and women, and it doesn't seem like there would be any talking your way out of it if they caught you. Ellie gets away by hiding in a hollowed out tree, and after they leave, she's there on her own. That turns out to be life-saving for Jesse and Dina because she decides to go to the hospital rather than going back to meet up at the theater. In the flashback that opens the episode, we find out there's something there that would have killed them. That begins with Hanrahan coming into the same hospital sometime between when Isaac joined up in 2018 and now. Hanrahan, which you'll remember is the person that welcomed Isaac into the WLF whenever he left Fedra, goes to interview a new character named Elise Park, and when she mentions Isaac, it sounds like he's already risen through the ranks. She mentions that he's busy because the truce might have been broken, which is something you heard him argue with his prisoner about in the torture scene. And she says they're going to need soldiers, so Isaac wants to know why Elise killed some of hers. It turns out she was tasked with clearing the hospital. Everything was going according to plan, and they only had the basement levels left. The first was completely empty, not even a rat, which could be suspicious, so she sent her best team down to the next one, expecting the same thing. Her son was leading the mission, and he called to say the walls were covered with Cordyceps. That's not entirely out of the ordinary. We saw places like that throughout the first season, so she told them to keep going. The next time he called, he was having trouble breathing and told her it was in the air. Instead of spreading through bites, his team got infected by breathing spores in the air. You run into this in different places while playing the game. It's pretty common, so the characters have to wear gas masks a lot. The show decided not to use them in the first season and introduced the Tendril Network instead. The story here is that this is where they brought the first patients during the outbreak in 2003. This area has been isolated, and apparently the Cordyceps have just been evolving down there since then. It hasn't spread anywhere else though. This will turn out to be terrible news for Nora, because after Ellie sneaks past the guard and his dog, she gets into the hospital to find the ex-Firefly who works there as a medic. They have a short but tense exchange. As mentioned, Nora pinned her to the floor and made her watch while Abby was killing Joel, so she recognizes who this is pointing a gun at her. At first it sounds like she's sympathetic, and by saying what a terrible thing it was and how she still hears Joel scream sometimes at night, she softens Ellie's focus. She takes this opportunity to say he died like a little bitch and throws some kind of liquid on her before running away. That's the last thing that works out for her though. She has to jump and is well on her way to losing Ellie until she runs into a dead end. In the flashback, the first thing you see when Hanrahan comes in is an entrance to a stairwell that Elise's people sealed up. And when Nora runs past that, you know she's finished. With nowhere else to go, she tries to cut through the elevator shaft. This is something else we heard Elise mention. She told Hanrahan that all the elevators were blocking the shafts, which helped to keep the basement sealed, and you can see on her face that Nora knows what's down there. Still, with Ellie shooting at her, this probably was the best option right up until her weight caused the elevator to fall. She gets injured, and when Ellie starts shooting at her again, she's forced to take her chances on level B2. When Ellie follows, she comes across a hall completely covered with cordyceps. You can see the spores in the air, and when she discovers Elise's son Leon, whose body is somewhat preserved, a cloud of spores comes out of his mouth when he opens it. I don't know if the spores will play a significant role in the TV show going forward, but this made for a fantastically creepy sequence. They tipped us off to what was down there so they could build up the suspense as she went down the hall, which still looked mostly normal. You see little glints in the air, and then it just builds and builds. When this showed up in the trailers, I wondered why they decided to introduce spores now. I knew how this played out in the game, and it's another situation where Ellie's immunity saves her, but it wasn't until I watched the conversation she has here with Nora at the end that it made sense. After she leaves Leon, she turns on an emergency generator, which also turns on some red lights to set the mood. She finds Nora, who's already struggling to breathe, and who tells her she's a stupid bitch for getting them both killed. When she sees Ellie isn't infected, she realizes the rumors are true. She's the immune girl they heard about in Salt Lake. This is why they needed the spores, or at least it makes this work much better than any of the other options I can think of. Nora is dying, but she's still lucid. She can make the connection to who Ellie is, and she can reveal what happened at St. Mary's Hospital. Yeah, they could do it with a bite, but she's been bitten so many times already, and they would have had to figure out some elaborate scheme where they were both bit at the same time. We don't know for sure if this is the first time Ellie heard the truth or not. Obviously, she was mad at Joel about something at the beginning of season 2, but she may have just gotten to the point where she couldn't lie to herself anymore. Nora does lay it out like it happened and explains to Ellie that the doctor Joel killed was Abby's father. When she's confronted with it, Ellie does say she knows, and when Nora refuses to tell her where Abby is, she grabs a pipe off of the ground and becomes the torturer. You see a different shade of rage come out as she continues to pound on her legs, and then it cuts away to a flashback of Joel coming into her old room in his house in Jackson to wake her up. It puts a big smile on a younger Ellie's face, and after she says hi, it cuts to black. So after a dark turn, it looks like we'll be getting some light in the form of some, if not all, of the flashbacks with Pedro Pascal that were in the preseason trailers. These were a big part of the game, and I expected that they would be spread out through these episodes as we went, and just none of them showed up yet. With only 2 episodes left, they pretty much have to happen now. That will definitely make for a memorable episode, and may answer some of my biggest questions about this season. The trip to the hospital filled in a lot of of blanks about what they're up against and what each of them has to lose. We saw the rage under the surface and the violence Ellie is capable of at the end, but also know Dina might have some of her own to bring to the table. It might not be a factor though, because she might be out of commission after the arrow, and we've been focused on how getting together would affect their decisions, but Jesse will also find out he has something to lose in this situation at some point. Taking care of Nora brings them closer to Abby, even if we haven't seen her. With how much this season has been about secrets, I don't think Joel's can just come out like that. That feels like the beginning rather than the end. The flashbacks have to be about processing that or explain where she was at before she heard what Nora said. I think they implied there was more going on when she talked to Jesse on the morning of the day he died. Each one of these episodes has revealed another secret someone was holding on to, so it feels like it's Joel's turn. And I think that is a great place to leave things. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.